Here, speed brake.
What's up, everybody? It's Ryan. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't been here before, I'm a former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, and commercial pilot. Today we're going to be breaking down scenes from the movie Flight with Denzel Washington. It's going to be a fun one if I don't say so myself. Before we get going, if you would, just dominate that like button, maybe even subscribe. Every time you like and subscribe, a pilot somewhere gets their wings. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to give you some feedback on what it was like going from flying F-15Es and F-16s to flying commercial aircraft, and the pilots that were actually in the accident that this movie was based on, Alaska Flight 261. One was an Air Force pilot, one was a Navy pilot, and Denzel Washington in this had naval experience. So I'll talk about how maybe that could have played into his decision making during this entire scene. It's gonna be a good one. You can also hit me up on Instagram if you wanna say hello or give me other ideas for stories. That's how I got the idea to do Flight. Someone asked me on there to do that, so ask and you shall receive.
Take a look at this. You gotta be kidding me.
Let's dive in.
How long has sleeping duty been out?
26 minutes. We're gonna start descending any second now.
Well, looks like you'll need to wake him up.
Southjet 227 Atlanta Center, descend and maintain flight level 300.
Descend and maintain flight level 300, Southjet 227.
Okay, so I've never had a situation where another pilot has been sleeping, but there are times when you're a commercial pilot, when you enter the circadian low, which is like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., and you get super tired no matter how rested you are. But there's ways to fight against it, obviously, besides taking a little nap like Denzel's doing here. One of those ways is to stand up, so that's a way to fight against it, and then additionally caffeine, obviously. So when he goes to spin the dial, that's how it actually works in a commercial plane. You spin the dial, you put in the 300, and then you hit basically an execute button that'll start taking you down. And if you have failure of the trim system, which is actually what happened in Alaska Flight 261, it's basically gonna just go full down potentially, because there's not something that kind of guides it and it allows it to go relatively slowly based on a trim system. So a trim system is there to fight against that massive amount of force that the airflow is putting on your jet and allows you to control it without having to put like 150 pounds of pressure on, which is what ended up having to happen. So we'll get to that in a second.
Whoa, whoa.
What is that?
The elevator feels really stiff, sir.
All right, don't force it. All right, Margaret, get everybody strapped in. Get everybody strapped in tight.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Turn left hard, sir.
Power back, power back.
ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelt now. Fasten your seatbelt securely now.
I have no control on my side. No control on all, sir.
Lost hydraulics. Center, this is Southjet 227. We've lost our hydraulics and feels like our pitch control.
Southjet 227 Atlanta Center,
Turn on the backup
understand you
pump,
lost
the backup
hydraulics
pumps.
and pitch control.
That is affirmed. We are in an uncontrolled
Southjet 227 Atlanta, say your intentions. Are you declaring emergency?
Everybody's belted in. Are we going down?
belted in with everybody in brace positions. Yes, that is affirmed. We are in a dive. We are in a dive. We have lost vertical control. We're gonna need drag. I want you to throw out everything you got. The speed brakes, the gear, everything.
Here, speed brake.
Okay, so when you get in a situation where you need to recover, it's called an upset recover, and there's procedures for that for a commercial plane, for a fighter jet, etc. One of those is getting the throttle back if you're going downhill. That way you still have options, because if you get going super fast and then try to pull up, it's gonna overstrain the airframe with too many G-forces in a commercial aircraft. Now in a fighter, all bets are off. Quick side story, I actually have a friend of mine who is an instructor. He was in Saudi Arabia teaching some pilots over there in an F-15E, now the F-15EX. and they went into what's called a notch, and they were getting super low. And he was looking outside, focused on some other things, and the pilot basically froze up. So what he ended up having to do, because they were basically going supersonic downhill, he took the jet last minute, probably a couple hundred feet above the ground, and pulled about 11 Gs. So they stayed awake somehow because it was probably a quick 11 Gs, but it stressed the airframe so bad that it bent parts of the airframe. Not parts that kept it from flying, but parts that ended up having to be replaced. And that's just gonna be even more exacerbated on a commercial plane. I mean, the max stress level for these things, don't quote me on this if you would, but I'm assuming, yeah, somewhere around like 4 Gs, maybe a little more than that, is when you're gonna start bending parts of the aircraft where wings are potentially gonna fail and things like that. But getting out all the drag you can in this scenario, I think it's a solid call, because you're obviously getting the throttle back, but you still need to slow down more. So yeah, gear down, flaps potentially, speed brakes what you would start with. And it's interesting because the gear doors are not stressed for a lot of airflow. So those things are gonna go really quick. The gear potentially are gonna bend off and break off as well, because as they're in transit, they're really weak. So all the mechanical things that are moving as it's coming out, there's different limitations for extending and retracting than just having the gear out. So for example, extending and retracting might be a 250 knot limit, when having the gear out just hanging might be a 300 knot limit, because it can handle a lot more stress when it's already out in the airstream. But what they're doing right here, I mean, you gotta be an athlete, you gotta make it happen. This might potentially be your only option, so hey, give it a shot.
Turn it clockwise, push it back down. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's okay.
So Denzel called up the flight attendant to come sit in the jump seat, because he knows he's gonna have to put a ton of force, 140 pounds plus, and that's how it was in the actual situation with Alaska Flight 261. It was an MD-80 that had basically a catastrophic loss of that trim system. So in order to get any movement with the elevator, you had to pull that 140 pounds. So he knows he's gonna have to do that, so he calls up her to do that. Now, is it realistic? I don't know. With the 737 MAX, actually before one of the accidents, the jump seater realized what was happening, and he reached up and turned off the trim control system that was making the runaway trim happen. So without the jump seater on that scenario, it would have crashed a day sooner. Unfortunately, it ended up crashing the next day. So super sad story, obviously, but hey, all bets are off when you're in a situation like this, and Denzel's being a fighter pilot right now. He's making it happen. He's being an athlete.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, come on. When I tell you I want you to push these forward, full power, full throttle, can you do that? Yeah. Okay, when I tell you...
Wait, sir, what are we doing? Why would I trim down?
We're gonna roll it, okay?
What do you mean, roll it?
We gotta do something to stop this dive. Margaret, what's your son's name?
Trevor.
Say I love you, Trevor.
What?
Black box, say I love you, Trevor.
I love you, Trevor. You be a good boy. Mommy loves you.
Okay, here we go. I've got control.
Oh, Lord Jesus!
All right, Evans, flaps.
Flat!
Speed brakes.
Speed brake!
So the first officer right now is basically turning into a pile of jello with that with that sound. Obviously though, if you don't have military experience, you've never rolled an aircraft before upside down, this is gonna be a crazy thing to try to wrap your mind around. I mean, it is anyways, right? But Denzel has military experience, so you know, he's gone upside down a ton of different times in the F-18 in this scenario, so he's like, yeah, no big deal, I'm trying to make it happen. And ultimately, the reason why he's doing it is the same reason why in Alaska Flight 261 they did it, because the only thing that they had was basically push control. They couldn't really do anything with the pull. So they rolled, and they were actually able to stop the dive. It was like 70 degrees nose low, even more at certain points for the Alaska Flight 261. But when they rolled upside down, they were able to slow the dive to about 9 degrees. Now, they were up really high out over the ocean. They chose not to fly over populated areas while they were figuring this all out, and they essentially just became test pilots. So they ended up crashing, obviously, which is super sad, but they were actually awarded posthumously a medal that essentially would only go to the best aviators in the civilian world. So they were able to get that, but they were just making it happen, doing everything they could in order to try to save everyone. And that's what's depicted here in this scene right now. So now he's rolling it. Let's see how it goes.
When we're level, we can maintain altitude like this.
Southjet 227, Atlanta Center. I see your position 4.5 miles southeast of the airport at 1,800. Are you okay?
Atlanta Center, this is Southjet 227. We are inverted. I repeat, we are inverted.
Southjet 227, did you say inverted?
We're losing oil pressure, pump failure, both
We're
engines.
all right.
Yep, so he's surprising everybody with I was inverted. See, not just a quote from Top Gun Maverick, but at the end of the day, or actually that was from the real Top Gun. Sorry about that, first mistake I've ever made. So they're getting low oil pressure right now on their engines because these engines are obviously made to be right side up. But it's an interesting fact that actually in the F-18, those engines are made to be right side up as well. If you go for more than about 10 seconds with negative G on those things, you could flame out and keep fuel from flowing to the engine. So they have to specially modify the Blue Angels, believe it or not. But in this situation, yeah, these engines definitely not meant to go inverted. So I'm guessing, you know, at the end of the day, probably 20 seconds max of oil that'll keep flowing to the engine. So it's gonna eventually cause a fire or a flame out. So let's see how it goes.
All right, we're flying.
Notice that calm, cool, and collected attitude. I mean, when I was reading through the investigation of Alaska Flight 261, those pilots were calm, cool, and collected as much as you can be. I mean, you're doing everything you can to try to save everybody's life. So Denzel in this, he's acting, in my opinion, just like Sully did, you know, how any aviator would. That's, you know, they're the last line of defense. So if you start turning into a puddle of jello, is what I like to call it, kind of like the first officer is here, you're just not any good to anyone. So you got to be as cool as a cucumber and do your best to try to recover the aircraft, whether you're in a fighter or a commercial aircraft. So I like how they're depicting that here.
Fire the left engine.
Put it out.
Look at me, I'm ready.
So honestly, at this point, I wouldn't put out those fires. I would keep those things burning because they're still providing some thrust, you know, and that's something we would think about as well. You know what, if you're gonna crash land anyways, might as well have some throttle and some ability to get some speed because you're about to go down anyways, and then maybe right before touchdown, put out those fires. But any fire that you have in an aircraft engine, it's providing some thrust. Might even be providing a little more thrust by shooting that flame out the back. So my opinion on this one, don't put them out, let them burn.
Atlanta, Southjet 227. Where's that airport?
227, it's 1 o'clock, 3 miles.
All right, we're not gonna make that. Our engines are burning up.
I see a field and a road ahead of us. We're gonna set it down there.
Roger, 227.
Oh no, fire the right now.
Evan, we're coming back around. Margaret, I want...
Oh no, we're all gonna die.
Shut the f up!
Dude, you're not helping me. That's what I would say if I was Denzel at this point. I'd be like, dude, make it happen, be an athlete, stop turning into a puddle of goo.
I want you to hit full power, full throttle, you understand? Here we go.
Evans, speed brakes.
Speed brakes.
Flaps full.
Flaps full. We're losing the left engine.
Southjet 227, I see you descending through 1,000. You concur?
Margaret, full power.
Now, if you've put those engines out, you've essentially cut off fuel to those engines, you've discharged a fire extinguisher into those, which is what those handles do, you're not gonna get any more throttle out of those engines. That's why, again, I would not be putting those out. I'd let them cook, baby. Give me some thrust. Give me something to work with here.
We lost the left engine.
Let it roll.
We're losing power on the right. We lost our power.
Are we gliding? Glide. Pitch for glide.
That'd be a good feeling. So now maybe you have some control, or the jet's just kind of stuck in a position where you're achieving max glide as far as that elevator goes. And again, Denzel holding it strong. First officer, man, I'm just gonna call that first officer puddle of goo. Come on, man, get it together. I like that Denzel tried to dodge it. He's like, you know what, God, you helped me so far. I'm gonna try to dodge this church. Hey, it's a thought that counts, right?
30, 20,
Brace.
10.
Brace for impact.
Whew. All right, so obviously an intense scene. You know, hopefully you've got those straps tightened up enough that, you know, you're not gonna hit that control column in front of you, the yoke there. And again, it's another reason why do we have yokes? I mean, comment below if you'd rather have a side stick, because I fly with a side stick in the A220 and I'm telling you, it's just so much nicer. And if there's a situation like this, the pilots aren't gonna get knocked unconscious because they're not gonna hit that big yoke in front of them. When I went from flying the 737 to flying the A220 and having the side stick, I'm telling you, just so much better. So Boeing, please, if you're watching this, when you design the 797, please, let's go side stick.
Everybody in the conference room.
Let's just make it an even better side stick than what the A220 and the Airbuses have. We can do this. We can do this together. You get a much better view of the screens, and honestly, it's just a way more comfortable cockpit. And every single pilot, commercial pilot that I've flown with, has just been saying they want the side stick. If they don't say they want the side stick, they've probably got stock in Boeing, and that's the only reason they want to keep that yoke in front of them. So please, I implore you, please, let's make this happen for the side stick. And not just because I flew the Viper, but because using that thing is super user-friendly. Okay.
All right.
So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed this rendition of Flight. I just want to say at the end of the day, you know, you got to be an athlete sometimes and make things happen. And kudos to Denzel Washington for playing the role. Seemed to be relatively well. Super entertaining movie. Definitely recommend going and checking that out. But the mindset when you go from flying something that starts with an F, like F-16, F-18, to flying something commercial, man, it's just such a different shift. But what I think it does well is it just reminds you that no matter what, you keep flying the plane. You keep doing everything you can to help everybody survive, help get out of a bad situation, and ultimately being that athlete is the best way to operate an aircraft, no matter what it is, in my opinion. And remember, don't turn into a puddle of goo. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm really glad that you were here. Please, before you go, please dominate that like button. It would mean a lot to me. Maybe subscribe if you would like. And then also hit me up on Instagram. Say hello. Most of all, hope you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video.